Namaskar. Welcome to this session. Today we are commencing to understand how Yogasanas have unique technology whereby that unique condition of a holistic involvement is possible, which is not otherwise possible, even in case of focus, which is a voluntary act, concentration, which is a voluntary act, and absorption, which is involuntary act. There we saw that 100% is not circumscribed of ourselves, although we claim to be involved or being focused, in focus or in intense concentration. So yoga has unique protocol, a preliminary, a technology whereby it is possible that viewers in you can get circumscribed in the very process of yogasanas whereby it becomes yoga. So we are not fragmented, our subjective entity is not fragmented. Although in a case of dreamless sleep, we do not have fragmentation, that we are totally in sleep. When we are in dreamless sleep, yet that is not yoga. And why it is not yoga can be understood by considering the Nidra vritti mentioned by Patanjali in the first chapter. Abhavapatti Aarambhana vritti Nidra. So therefore Nidra is not a yoga. But Yogasana is yoga. Now why and how? It is because Yogasana have something as a protocol, as an orientation, as a culture, has a unique preparatory phase, and that is why asanas can become yogasanas, and they are indeed yogasanas, there is yoga. So, as promised in the last session, today we are embarking upon that marvelous technology of asanas, which is constituted by Ashtadasha mahakriyas. So we are trying to briefly understand, just have introduction to this concept of Ashtadasha mahakriyas, whereby that endeavor becomes yogasana, otherwise that the endeavor becomes a physical exercise, that endeavor becomes a mental exercise, that endeavor becomes a posture. And that is why in the classical approach, it is very much important to be familiar with the concept of Ashtadasha mahakriyas. And for that purpose, we are just going to have orientation today. So let's get on to the topic for today. That is Ashtadasha mahakriyas of Yogasana. The first of the kriya is called Aarambhana kriya, the commencement kriya. In commencement kriya, so understand how the technology is now starting to operate, and this will tell you about the technology of asanas as well. So Aarambhana kriya, commencement act, the body, mind, breath have to be allowed interface. They must be mutually related to each other, mutually connected to each other. So that in a way becomes a kind of kneading act. The body, mind, breath are kneaded. So that's an important preparatory. Without being kneaded in body, mind and breath, Yogasanas don't get launched. Like before you want to roll out chapatis, you create that lump of material by kneading flour, oil and water together. So similarly, body, mind, breath have to be kneaded, and in kneaded condition only Yogasanas will actualize. So that's why it is called commencement act, Aarambhana Kriya, because that must be done, or that must be coming up right at the beginning. So that's the first Kriya. The second Kriya is called Sharira Kriya. So in Sharira Kriya, in an asana, which is almost a posture for any raw beginner, in that posture, the body is used for body, such as that means limbs for trunk, trunk for limbs, back for front, front for back, lower for upper, upper for lower, soft tissue body for hard tissue body, hard tissue body for soft tissue body. So all the body factors, skin, flesh, muscles, bones, tissues, cells, they are working on each other. They have to work on each other. That means legs have to work on limbs, limbs have to work on legs. The spine has to work on trunk, spine has to work on legs. So it is called body working for body, body working for body matter, body working for body factors, facets, aspects. Similarly, the body should work for breath. The body should work for breath and breathing process. So that must be clearly understood how in any given asana, the body is working for breath and breathing process. And the body should be working for mind, mental state, or mental activity. The body should work for mental activity, and in the preparatory act there is body, mind, breath awareness instated, and with that the body can also work for mind. So a neophyte should identify how the body is working for body, where the body is a beneficiary and the body itself is agency, benefactor. How the body is working for breath and breathing, where the breath and breathing is beneficiary and the body is benefactor. How the body is working for mind, where the mind is beneficiary and body is benefactor. And this becomes probable because of the needed condition. Not being needed, they won't work. So, in simple words, body for body, mind and breath. How the body works for body, how the body works for breath, how the body works for mind. Then, an interesting concept should be understood here. That there is also something, a unique kind of a semantic. The body and bodying, mind and minding, breath and breathing. So we must develop clarity between what is breath and breathing. Breathing refers to the process of it. The process of the breath is called breathing. Process of the mind is called minding, and the process of the body is called bodying. So, how is there the bodying for breath and bodying for mind and bodying for body? How the body works for body, mind, breath, and how the body works for bodying, minding and breathing. That means it implies that the body must also work to set right the breath and breathing, set right the mind and minding, and not just as it happens in physical culture to set right the body and bodying. So body surfaces the potentials to be benefactor to set right the breath and breathing, mind and minding, as much as body and bodying. That is called Sharira Kriya. That is called bodily act. So that is the second. And this is only probable, possible because of needed condition, which was explained in the first of the Kriyas, that is Aarambhana Kriya. Then comes Svasana Kriya, breathly act, Svasa Kriya. Svasa Kriya or Svasana Kriya or breathly act. Here, the breath must be benefactor and it should address the body and bodying in that posture. The breath must work for breath and breathing in that posture. And the breath and breathing should work on mind and minding in that posture. So that will work to set right, address the body bodying, mind minding, and breath breathing. That's called Svasa Kriya or breathly act, which is again possible because of the commencement act accomplished and the needed condition by the Aarambhana Kriya. So it is needed breath which works on your body, mind and breath. So when the needed breath and breathing, inhalative, exhalative, retentive, etc., when they start having endowments for needed body and needed mind, needed breath as well, that is called Svasa Kriya, Svasana Kriya. So there must be some training for each of these Kriyas. This is the third of the Kriya called Svasa Kriya, breathly act. The fourth Kriya is Manasa Kriya, mindly act. A needed mind has potentials and endowments to become benefactors of needed body, needed breath and needed mind. So when the mind is spearheading the force as benefactor, then that becomes Manasa Kriya. So in asanas we have to learn how the mind sets right the body matter and bodying, how the mind sets right the breath and breathing and the breathing process, and how the mind sets right the mind and the minding process or mind processes. That is fourth of the Kriya called Manasa Kriya, mindly act. So whether asanas, the mind is able to contribute. In physical culture we don't bother about it. Then comes the fifth of the Kriya called Indriya Kriya. This is rendered as sensely acts. Not sensory act but sensely acts. The senses will contribute for your posture, gesture and breathesture. On earlier occasion I introduced you to these concepts, which is posture, gesture, breathesture. So, Yogasana is not just a posture. There is also usage and addressal of gestures and breathestures. So, in Indriya Kriya, the Indriyas means jnanendriyas, cognitive organs. They work to set right. They become benefactors and they set right the gesture, posture and breathesture. So then it is called Indriya Kriya. So in Indriya Kriya, you should recall at some stage it was explained, like with regards to visual organ, the eyes. Bottom eye awareness, upper eye awareness, inner eye awareness, outer eye awareness, center eye awareness. That becomes a conditioner to your embodiment and primarily to your mind. They might significantly contribute. In case of ears, fore-ear awareness, hind-ear awareness, bottom ear awareness, top ear awareness, center ear awareness. With respect to olfactory organ, nose, the membrane awareness, septum awareness, floor nostril awareness, gate nostril awareness, roof nostril awareness, and the center column of nostrils. The awareness there. They work differently. There are different kinds of conditioners. And one can easily understand that this works significantly for in the Chaityic realm, for Chitta Vritti conditioning. Indriya Kriya works quite strongly for beginner. So that is the Indriya Kriya, which is the fifth one. These are cognitive organs, jnanendriyas. Tvak, charma, they tvagendriya, chakshurendriya, shravanendriya, granendriya, rasanendriya. So the gustatory organ, the visual organ, the auditory organ, the olfactory organ, the tactile organ. These are 5 cognitive organs and they do work significantly, particularly in kneaded conditions. They work marvelously for posture, gesture, breathesture. They significantly work for posture, breathesture and gesture. So that is Indriya Kriya. The 6th one is Vachika Kriya. Vacha means organ of speech, organ of eloquence. In Vachika Kriya, the Vacha in Adhyatma is described in 4 phases called Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, Vaikhari. At some stage this was also discussed. And in Vachika Kriya, one is supposed to use the Madhyama Vani. In simple words, it is called silent speech. Not express speech with some decibels, which becomes an audible object for somebody's ears and your ears as well. But this is silent speech. In Vachika Kriya, there are 2 important facets. One is, which will be coming at later stage, called Prana Kriya. Prana Kriya. For Prana Kriya, you have to use the sound forms Swara Varna Vyanjana. The alphabets of Sanskrit language. Starting from A, etc., ending with Ksha, Ksha, Kshi, Kshu, Kshe, Kshai, Ksho, Kshau, Ksham, Kshaha. Ksha. So A to Ksha, all the sound forms. using them changes your breathing act because of the prana kriya in your breathing. So that is a vachi kriya and its first dimension. The second dimension, that in educative process, it is also advisable to be commentating on the process, commentating on actions, activities, responses, describing participations, involvement, dispensations, receptions, gives and takes, receptions and dispensations. So there must be a running commentary kind of thing which must be picked up by habit. This is such an important aspect of yoga. Being an adhyatmic endeavor, in adhyatma you are supposed to carry out the activities which are kaya, vacha, manasa. And in the fashionable outclassical yoga today, the organ of speech has no importance while one is performing an asana. While one is teaching an asana, the teacher does a lot of speechly act, which is all vaikhari. But one doesn't identify the importance of vachika kriya being adhyatmic kriya. It must be kaya, vacha, manasa carried out. More precisely, kaya, vacha, manasa, svasa carried out by body, mind, speech and breath. So the speechly act is very important. Now this is in the second dimension of it, is carried out by describing all activities and actions and responses and participations and involvements, addresses, benefactors and beneficiaries, benefits. So it is describing, defining, explaining, articulating by way of a running commentary, done silently, without opening a mouth, silently. This will also work for the literacy in yoga, which is such an important thing in the subject matter of yoga. It is not just execution, it is education. If it is education, there must be literacy. If that is literacy, there must be a speechly act by way of describing, defining, explaining. And this is by way of running commentary. So ardent student must pick up this habit. It cannot be done incessantly. So commentating for a while and then relaxing the commentary for a while and just experience. Again embark upon commentating, not commenting but commentating, and then again take a respite and then reflect and experience. If there is experience, the experience should be articulate rather than inarticulate. In order that it is articulate experience, it is important to articulate it by vachi kriya, and this is missed in the clamor of modern yoga in its popular avatar. So the point is, vachi kriya is important. Communication, intercommunication. Even the needed body, mind, breath will communicate to each other. You will have to communicate. They will communicate. They will mutually communicate. You will be communicated. You will be communicating. Subjective entity is communicating. Subjective entity is communicated. When the subjective entity is communicated, it is body which is communicating. Precisely, needed body communicating, needed mind communicating, needed breath communicating. So this is the vachika kriya which is so important in Adhyatma. So that is the sixth of the kriya. Now comes the seventh Kriya called Karma Kriya. This is something to have little philosophical base. All the earlier six Kriyas did not have any philosophical base significantly, but this has significantly the philosophical base. Because yoga depends upon, genuine yoga depends upon what is called karma bodha, what is called karma consciousness. Not having karma consciousness, you really cannot be in the corridor of classical yoga. You cannot imagine classical yoga being perfected without karma consciousness. So karma consciousness is so important, and therefore the karma kriya becomes that much important. So you will start developing clear visions and clarities in your conceptualizations and in construing the yoga in what you are doing. What is this karma kriya? Karma kriya is something that is constituted by karta, karma and kriya. There is a doer, there is a doing, and there is something done. Can you imagine something done without no doer whatsoever and no doing whatsoever? There must be some doing for something to be done. There must be a doer for something to be done. So this is a tripartite constitution of doer, doing, done. So we have to decipher the act, and in the act identify the subjective entity, the instrumental entity and the objective entity. So to identify what is karta, what is karma and what is kriya. What is the doer, who is the doer, what is the profile of the doer, what is the activity of the doer, and then what is doing, what are the instruments of doing, which are body, mind and breath, senses, organs, psyche, consciousness. So what are the instrumental entities in negotiating an yogasana, and that what ultimately is done. So the doer, doing, done is a triad which must be identified in what you are doing. So the doer is one who does, and the doer always has some intent, intention, purpose. So that should be identified with what purpose the doer is doing. What is the purpose that is constituting a doership in our own embodiment? So that will also put under scrutiny the purpose of your endeavor. So any improper kind of psychodynamics or purpose, it will be weeded out. So it is scrutiny of the doership. To scrutinize the doer, understand the doer, that is by understanding the purpose why the doer is doing. Why are we doing something? In simple words, to investigate, interrogate and investigate why are we doing what we are doing in negotiating an anasana or executing an anasana, yogasana. So to develop observations, ascertainments about why are we doing something, what are we doing, So why are we doing? What are we doing? How are we doing? So this is the investigative process. We shall investigate the whole doing, and that will investigate the doer, doing, done. The doer is always subjectivistic entity. Now the subjectivistic entity must have proper purpose and proper profile and proper pravartanam, proper intent. Then there comes the doing, kriya. Kriya yogyatvam. There must be propriety in all activities which are carried out by body aspects, breath aspects and mind aspects. So the instrumental entities must be in proper orchestration, in proper condition for something to become successful. If the instruments are faulty, very little chance of you succeeding in your endeavor. The orchestration of the instrument, the condition of the instruments should be proper. So the doing process should be objectified, and the doing process should be under scrutiny. Doing process should be under investigation. And then the done. What is done? What was intended to be done and what is done? Many times there is a big gap between what was intended to be done and then what really was done. If what really was done is inferior to what was intended to be done, then we infer that there was some fault in our process. So the doer, doing, done should be identified in an asana. So to give little clue, let me tell you here that associated body might be doing, or associated body, associated breath, breathing might be doing, associated mind, minding might be doing, the strand of the three might be doing. So that should be identified. Are these components coming in proper proportion and in proper process? That means the doing will be set right. So the doer has a profile that must be set right. By scrutiny, one must have insight into doer, whether the purpose is justifiable, whether the purpose is right, or whether there is something improper in intentions. So the doership should be investigated, read and investigated, interrogated. The doing should be on the anvil, should be again investigated, interrogated, and there must be that scrutiny. And the done must be also having scrutiny. So it will be experienced that in process of rendering an asana, sometimes the posture is done, and sometimes breathesture is done, and sometimes the gesture is done primarily. So this is how one will be handling an asana, that sometimes the posture is done primarily, sometimes gesture is done primarily, sometimes breathesture is done primarily, and then there must be collated, there must be that reconciliation so that nothing is lopsided or in imbalance. So the triad of doer, doing, done, the things are not just to be done in asanas, but the done must be inspected, interrogated, investigated, and under scrutiny. The doer too must be under this process, that the doing too should be under this process. Then strangely you will understand that the doer can be done. That's why if you recall, I said, I am doing Shirshasana and I am done in Shirshasana. Not that I have done Shirshasana, I am done in Shirshasana. Because Shirshasana does work on our subjective entity. It can carve, it can sculpt, it can process, it can culture, it can shape your subjective entity. And we spoke about these semantic aspects. I am doing Shirshasana. I am the doer of Shirshasana. I am done by Shirshasana. Which is different than I am done about Shirshasana. Shirshasana itself will work on you. It will be carving, sculpting, shaping your subjective entity. So the doer doing done in needed condition can, by rotation, change the role. Doer can become doing, doer can become done, done can become doing, done can become doer. Doing can become done, doing can become doer. So they can change their roles. They are not absolute compartments of doer, done, doing, but they can change the roles rotationally. That's the marvel of process of yoga. So they will play each other's role. Then you will start understanding the philosophical aspect which is to be adhered to. That your doer should not be body attached or body profused. Otherwise you end up saying, I am stiff, I am flexible, I am strong, I am weak. So that will be philosophically Shariratmavada, which is repudiated and refuted and disallowed. Then how is the subjective entity when it is affiliated with the mind? How does it work? That will be Manatmavada. That is also equally refutable and is also repudiated. How is the subjective entity which is in affiliation with the breath and breathing? So qualitatively you know when the I has reference with body, how is it? The I has reference with mind, how is it? I has reference with breath and breathing, how is it? And this makes a huge difference. Because the body has class, caste, creed, gender, status, stature, condition, genetic background, genealogical background, ethnic background. The mind too has the same delimiting factors: caste, class, creed, gender, status, stage, age, condition, genetic background, genealogical background, ethnic background. So I, which is totally drenched in body matter and mind matter, is something which is not accepted in philosophy of conduct of life. It is because there is a lot of gravity of all these delimiting factors called upadhis, which are class, caste, creed, gender, status, age, condition, and genetic, genealogical background, ethnic background. But the breath is unique. The breath doesn't have these gravities working on it, nor delimitations on it. The breath doesn't have class, caste, creed, gender, status, stage, age, etc., etc., genetic background, genealogical background, ethnic background. It's a unique instrument in yoga Why? That is why it is used in yoga. All forms of yoga takes recourse to breath as agency. It is a spearheading force insofar as instrumentalities are concerned. It is also one which influences subjective entity so that the gravities of delimiting factors are neutralized. On the mind too, they are neutralized. So the pronoun I sunk in body matter is undesirable. Pronoun I sunk in mind matter is undesirable. Pronoun I sunk in breath matter is desirable. So the karma kriya will help you render this, and that's why I said there is that philosophical component. How is it? Who am I? Am I body? Am I to identify myself with body? Am I to identify myself with the mind? Or am I to identify myself with the breath? Out of the three, which is better? So the karma kriya, the karma culture, activity culture will change, and this is to be experienced. The teachers should give the experience to the students about it. Working on the gravity of physicalized subjective entity, mentalized subjective entity, and breathified the subjective entity. So enormous field for activity culture, spectrum for activity culture is opened out. And more importantly, the karta, karma, kriya interchange the roles. So that is the seventh kriya. It is based on your doing. Yes, I am doing yogasana. What am I doing? Why am I doing? How am I doing? What is doing? What is the instrumental team? What is the subjective entity? What is the objective entity? And how to handle the subjective, instrumental, objective entities. That skill is learned by karma kriya. Then comes the eighth kriya called jnana kriya. While you are in yogasana, usually we just bother about what am I doing and am I doing properly, and we are instructed to be doing that properly. We get all instructions from the teachers to be doing what we are doing properly, and that's why yoga has become very, very technical subject, telling us about right and wrong, do's and don'ts, proper and improper, perfect and imperfect. And naturally we opt for something that is perfect, something that is right, something that is correct, rather than the opposite of it. But nobody puts a question, although it is believed that yoga is experiential subject, you are experiencing something. In no way that person is anesthetized and put in a posture, deeming that posture is most important thing. The posture would come very easily if somebody is anesthetized, like in operation theatre. The patient who is undergoing or who is to undergo operation is anesthetized, so the person doesn't interfere in your operations, which are carried out by the surgeons. But the posture is not important. In that case, the teachers would better anesthetize a person and get the posture done, put the body in position. But there is always experience, there is always understanding, there is always perception, sensation, and that's why it is one of the preparatories, awareness, activity, sensitivity. So there is something that is known. So put a question, what am I doing? Knowing while I am doing, and not just obsessionally go for what am I doing? What am I knowing? This is the base of Jnana Kriya. So let's try to discuss this and onwards. But that will be next time. So enough for the time being. Namaskar all of you.